Times have changed.
Times have changed. What is going on, Elevation Nation? Wow. We are way, way past episode 250. And this guest today is not a new guest. It's a familiar person who was on episode, I think, 20 something. Man, time flies. Samantha Soloway, welcome back to Elevation Nation. You've been in Elevation Nation since you joined us for the first conversation. And now you're just coming back, hanging out. Life has changed for all of us. You graduated from your master's program in Northwestern, and Sam and I were like, damn, we got to catch up with Samantha. What's going on, Samantha? Welcome back to Elevation Nation.
Thanks for having me. Any excuse to talk to you two is time well spent. So excited to chat.
The feeling is mutual, and one of the amazing parts about Elevation Nation that we always talk about is the fact that we get to meet new amazing people and sit down, put our phones away for an hour, not worry about work or anything else, and chat. But I will say, what's sometimes even more special is being able to do this with a friend and a former elevator, current elevator, someone who we love. And so I'm so glad we got to do this because Samantha, who I never call you Samantha, by the way, so that was weird, but I'm going to try to be formal for the podcast. People know who I'm talking to. You've been up to a lot since we last spoke. You were elevator number 15 over 2 years ago, I believe, when we had you on the podcast. You are still doing similar things, but a lot has changed. You had a little stint at a school in Evanston, something close to my heart. I think we're going to have to talk about that a bit. But Sauls, this is Elevation Nation. You did this before. You're going to do it again. For people that don't know how amazing you are as a human being, can you give everyone a little elevator pitch? Who is Samantha Soloway?
Of course. So Sam Soloway is someone who truly cares about everybody, especially those with disabilities. She cares deeply about accessibility and inclusion and equity, and is trying to live those values every single day in the work she does. And yeah, she's from Chicago, born and raised, been traveling the world, but is back home in Chicago for now.
Been traveling the world. So what did you study at Northwestern? Because I know you were at Vanderbilt before. Smarty, going to another smarty school. What did you study?
So my background's in special education. I became a K through 12 special educator at Vanderbilt. Was in the working world doing the accessibility at Yahoo thing, but wanted to go back to school to really understand what business and design really looks like. So I got my master's in product design, development, and management, which is essentially the way, learning the way systems work and processes work and embedding that human-centered approach to innovation. And so that's what I just graduated with and what I do every day as an experience innovation strategist. And that's where I am in my journey right now.
Speaking my damn language when it comes to product and user-centered design, being human-centric in what we do, empathizing with all the different types of people that are going to use your product, your platform, your experience. So I nerd out when you talk about this stuff. But I think, Sauls, what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was more than just work. Life is more than just the career path. And we have a lot of cool people on here. We talk about their passions, many of them driving towards those passions to be their career, to make them money, to find that fulfillment. But what we haven't talked about as much with elevators is some of the stuff that happens outside of work, some of the passions and fulfillment that you find. Maybe, people like to say the 5 to 9 before the 9 to 5, or if you're a night owl, later in the day. So, Soloway, what are some of the things that you've been doing outside of work?
So outside of work, I feel like the biggest thing is that I always try to spend time doing the things I love with people I love the most. If you think back to college and even in high school, you were always in clubs. You found sports that you loved, activities that you were really passionate about, and you tried to really get involved in those things and spend your time outside of class, outside of work, doing things that made you happy and excited and introduced you to a like-minded community. So I've always been really invested in finding things to spend my time doing, whether it be volunteering or mentoring or just hanging out with friends in a new city to be something that I prioritize. But do you want me to get into something that I'm working on in Chicago, or do you want to unpack what I did in New York?
Nah, let's talk about what's going on right now. That's what we want to, we want to hear about. What is Samantha Soloway doing right now to make the world a better place? We know you're doing a bunch of different things, so maybe you just pick one of it.
Yeah, so first thing that I would say that is getting me super jazzed is I found an organization called Experience Camps. Was a big camper growing up and always wanted to give others the chance to go to camp. And so for those who aren't familiar, Experience Camps is a week-long free camp in multiple different locations across the U.S. That gives kids who had experienced significant loss a week to be at camp with others who have experienced that significant loss. So it could be a parent, a primary caregiver, or a sibling. And it is so beyond unbelievable. They call it the best week ever because it truly is. And the reason why I love it the most is one, camp. Seeing these kids at camp, doing camp activities, nothing better. But even more so, I think growing up, raising money and being charitable is something that I've always been passionate about. But sometimes when you give to research, you don't necessarily see the end outcome or the end product of how your money really impacts that research, other than later down the line when cures happen. And so you should still obviously do that. But knowing that like your money goes to buying s'mores or giving free transportation or flights to kids or getting them up on water skis or climbing a climbing gym, like that's where the power really happens. And just hearing and learning from them after they've experienced something so significant to them is really game changing. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share and spread the word about because that's happening all over.
So I am not a camp guy, but I know you and Parker love camp. So let me live vicariously through you both for a minute. What makes the environment of camp so special? And why is it so important that every kid is able to access this type of experience?
What a wonderful question, Sam. And I'm so glad that you finally asked me on the podcast all this time later. I like to say, Samantha, I don't know if you say the same thing. It's funny. I never call you Samantha. That's weird in itself, but I have to continue to that. So I like to always say, like my mom and I, when we talk about my camp experience, I am who I am because of my experiences that I have had at camp. I think especially at a sleepaway camp in particular, I mean, there's all a bunch of camps, but you learn the idea of being independent. You learn how to think for yourself. And I think more importantly is you can explore what you like and learn what you don't like. And you get to do that at a young age when the stakes are low and you kind of have to learn how to do it on your own. And camp is a place that allows for that exploration. And I think it is so critical for a young person, a child, to have that ability outside of school, which is a very, very structured environment, to have the ability to play and learn, laugh, cry, mess up in camp, especially in the outdoors.
Yeah, I would completely add to that. The only thing, agree with that. Only thing I would add is that there's something in the energy and in the spirit of camp where people are just like wholeheartedly themselves and are so authentic and are really able to show up in however they want to show up. So first of all, I love that about camp. Second thing I love about camp is you're really exposed to other people's experiences, other people's lived experiences, and you have the opportunity to learn from them, to listen to them, to hear what they're going through. And that's a unique environment that you can't really get anywhere else. So all the power to
And you
experience
also like
camps.
you just spend so much time with people in like a different way. Like at school, like you're spending time in a classroom looking at a teacher, you do the homework, but at camp you're like running around, things are happening, you're eating meals together, you're doing like literally, I mean, if we're talking about sleepaway camp, from morning to sleep, it's all together. And I couldn't agree with you more about just being genuine, authentic. You know, at my camp, they didn't allow phones. Technology was like hard to come by. You know, girls were not allowed to wear makeup. They always like, it was very, very like camp oriented in the sense that you are who you are and just let's live that. So Sam, I mean, I'm going to convince you for the rest of your life to send your kids to camp. And maybe if you don't send your kids to camp, your grandchildren to camp. I just think it's really important in someone's growth.
Listen, I did camp for a week. That's how I met one of our other elevators and my current roommate, Matt McPartland. We were camp counselors for a basketball camp for a week, and we went to an actual camp, not just like at the high school. We went to Camp Horseshoe, and I saw the magic, even if it was just for a week, of how much fun I had. And selfishly, I had graduated high school, and I asked the coaches if I could come back as a college kid, which no one ever did because I had so much fun. So I totally get why camp is special, and I'm so glad, Soloway, that you're giving back. But I'm going to ask you a little bit of a deeper question here. Obviously, you are volunteering some of your time and money to these types of camps so that all folks of all different walks of life can access camp. I want to ask you, though, what do you gain from helping and volunteering from these camps? Obviously, you're not a camper anymore. You're going in and trying to make someone else's summer incredible. But every time any of us give, there's a little bit, I'm not going to call it selfishness, but benefit that we get from it. So I want to ask you, what are the benefits that you as a human have been able to receive by volunteering your time with this camp?
So I think one of the biggest things is I get to put my skill set to practice. So being a special education teacher, I had a lot of experiences doing dealing with behaviors of all types. And so as part of the clinical team, I get to work and be part of these kids' clinical experiences. So just being able to utilize like skill sets and expertise that I may not be practicing on a day-to-day basis as a teacher, but getting to show up in that space is really rewarding for me. But beyond that, I think it's just having intentional time to, again, like step back, put things in perspective, and just learn from these individuals who have experienced so much in their life, and just the wisdom that they've gained, the grief journey that they've been through so far, and the grief journey that they have ahead. They just are really so incredible and unbelievable. And it's hard to explain, but it's one of those things where in any experience, you hope you feel different or feel changed in some way. And every time I step into camp every year, it's game changing. So great volunteer experience. Highly recommend. But yeah, the summer vibes, I can only not think about camp, so I had to bring it up.
I love it. I mean, so the camps only run during the summer is what you're saying. Okay, got it. So, you know, it's July. August, September rolls around. What is then your focus going into the latter half of the year?
Yeah, so I would say that camps happens in August, which is great. So we're gearing up for that now. But on the theme of summer, something else I wanted to bring up of how I spend my time is supporting other small businesses that I may stumble upon or learn about. And so farmers markets are big in Chicago, and I'm sure they're big everywhere you are too. And there was one farmers market this past year that I stumbled across called Fueled by AF. AF is hilarious because people think it stands for asthma, but It's not. Her name's Angelica Ford. And she has started a company where she employs individuals with disabilities and gives them the opportunity and career experience to make all of these nut butters and protein bites. And she sells them at farmers markets and at other events in Chicago and storefronts in the Chicagoland area, but then also online as well. And it's been such a unique opportunity to like literally stumble across her company at a farmer's market and have since met some of the employees that she works with and have learned from them and go support it every week when they're there. But then to show like
I love that. It's so cool when you stumble upon anything that you can kind of find common ground and passion and a sense of community from. So I think it's hard to come by, honestly. You have to go out there and try to immerse yourself in the communities and go out in the neighborhoods. And honestly, I work from home. So getting out of my apartment to have those moments where I'm stumbling and feeling part of something greater than just these four walls around me is difficult. But I think it's something that I'm striving to do more of. And it's certainly a goal of mine as I go into these next years is solidifying my place in the DC community.
I love that. So I'm thinking maybe we turn the page in this conversation and we have a conversation about something else. Soloway, I'm really curious, like, for you personally, you know, we just talked a ton about how you're making the world a better place, how you're helping other people in some regard elevate. You know, you're walking around at markets and you're looking at amazing things that are going on there and you're helping out at camps and whatnot. But let's talk about you in particular. Like, now you're graduated, you've put all this hard work in. Like, going forward, what is something that you want to do long term?
So I think my goal when I started, and I believe I told this story when I was first on Elevation Nation, but the reason why I care about all of this is because it started in the classroom with one of my best friends to this day named Julia Lee. She was singing out of turn, dancing in place, but it didn't matter. She was able to be her true, authentic self, and everyone accepted her for that reason. And since it started in the classroom, I know it's going to end in the classroom too. I see myself wanting to be a teacher, professor at a university, and sharing the lessons that I've learned, not only in the corporate world, but also outside of work, to really embed this like accessible, inclusive thought everywhere. Like, this is a mindset, and the only way things change and become less performative and truly become transformative is when people learn and are exposed to new thinking and challenge the way they usually think.
The world, I believe, has gotten better, but certainly has a long way to go when it comes to ensuring everything is accessible for people of all walks of life. And so I commend you, Samantha, for what you are doing. As you know, I look up to you and how much passion and love that you give to the world. And it inspires me to try to make the world a better place every day. I do have a question, though, because this is new to me, that you wanted to become a professor to spread this passion and this knowledge around. This is a new fact that we haven't talked about. So I want to ask a question that may be a bit off-putting, but we're close enough friends that I feel comfortable to ask it. In today's modern society,
Cool.
So many people are trying to climb, elevate, work their way up a company, make more money, become more famous. And for many young people, it's, how do I get a promotion? How do I get a more high paying job? What is next for me? And so, while I think a professor is extremely commendable, right now you are not teaching. You are in a more corporate role, I would say. And so for so many, we get trapped in this mindset of how do I get higher in that corporation? But for you, your end goal is not necessarily to get super high in this corporation. It's I want to go back to school and teach people and make an impact. How have you been able to balance your natural ambition for wanting to be better and get promoted and do a great job with knowing that where you're currently at is not necessarily your end game? And has that been tough?
No, I think this is a great question. I think no matter what age you are or what stage of life you're in, like you always have this internal fight with like, what do you want? How are you going to get there? I see other people doing it. Like, I want to do that. And I think some of the best advice I got, I know this is hilarious, but recently on Instagram, there was this meme that said, in your 20s, like, you're really just a child adult. So technically at 27, I'm 7 years old. Like, I'm not supposed to know everything. I'm not supposed to figure it out. When you're 7, what are you? You're kindergarten, first grade, like just really like learning the basics, learning the basic skills, like exposing yourself to new opportunities, new experiences, learning what you like, learning what you don't like. And I needed this metaphor in my life, though it was a meme on social media, but I needed it because it just puts things in perspective. Like, I'm in my knowledge seeking, learning stage of life. And I know if I just, again, keep my head down, am driven by what I'm passionate about, everything's going to come in the way. And if I plan too far in advance, or I think I need to do this, this, and this in order to get there, it's not going to happen. So really focusing on your why, focusing on what makes you happy, surrounding yourself with people that do that for you too.
Sam, we just had this conversation over the past weekend, right? Very similar. Two points. One being, Sam, we talked about if you're waking up every day and you're trying to make the world a better place and you're not doing wrong by others, I think you'll end up in a pretty good place one day if you just continue to live by those values. And then to the other point that Miles Grossman was saying to both of us, he was like, think of it this way. And Miles just gave great perspective. He was like, when you typically retire, right? You typically retire when you're 65, right? So we're 27. We're 40 years hypothetically away. So you have 4 decades essentially to be a professional, be a working person. We're in the first freaking decade, and we're not even almost all the way through that. So like, think about that, and to think about how far we've all come, but yet there's so much more to go is really cool and exciting, because we're not supposed to have all the answers. We're not supposed to be the best. It's okay. We're all along this journey. And I do think, though, Samantha, that now in your 20s is the great place to build your foundation, because when you get to your 30s and if you don't have that foundation ready, you're going to fall behind a little bit, because you're going to be maybe focused on other things like getting married, having kids, starting a family. And if you don't have that foundation, it might be a little bit harder to build up what it is you want to build up.
It's so funny because just the way you were talking about foundation, I always go back to like your classic Psych 101 class, and it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, how are you satisfying your needs now in order to really set yourself up for that strong foundation moving forward? Because ultimately, when things go awry, when things aren't going to be perfect, you're going to hit roller coasters, ups and downs. Like, what you come back to is who you are as a human being and who you surround yourself with, who's in your network. So like, the only thing you can really do to build your strongest self is build out your community, find out what you love to do, and just do it every day with those people, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
There's a lot of opportunities in life to reflect back on what really matters. And I think it gets really easy to lose sight of that. With so much technology and constant stimulation and plans and travel and comparison and money and this and that, it really sometimes is difficult to strip back to like your core tenets of what you as a human actually care about and what brings you inspiration and fulfillment and joy and passion. And I don't necessarily have one clear answer for how you can get back to that current state. But I think the more often we can get back to what really matters, whether that's you like to be introspective and do an exercise and mind map your core things that bring you joy, which I did about a couple weeks ago because I needed it, or whether it's you go in nature and turn your phone off for a full day, which I did last week because I needed it, or countless other things, going to therapy, talking to friends, calling your parents, figuring out what they care about at their age, whatever it is that you need to do to strip back some of the societal pressures that we feel and get back to what truly matters for you, I think is just such a healthy reminder that unfortunately as young people, we're always running and wanting to do more and make memories, but sometimes it's nice to take a moment to figure out what memories are worth making.
We're habit-driven people. Like, we build these habits in our life that, like, they come so normal. Like, they become almost, you don't even think about it. I mean, Soloway, you'll probably know better than us. Like, how much of the brain's thoughts are unconscious, like, or in your subconscious, all of your decisions, what, 95%? I made that up. You probably know better than me.
Well, it's actually, so I was recently in Iceland and it reminded me of this, but like if you think of an iceberg, you only see 10% of a human or a person or an iceberg. Like you only see 10%. 90% is underneath. 90% is inside of who you are. So when you see something on the outside that seems off, all below or all inside is going to be all fixing and trying to work and make it better. But ultimately, if you just try to perfect that 10%, that's not going to hold that iceberg together. So really focusing on like who you are, what makes you happy, what makes you feel good is so important. Parker and Sam, I love what you have to say about like mental health, focusing on mental health, focusing on like how you feel, because that's why I think also exposing yourself to clubs and volunteer experiences and things outside of your everyday schedule are so important. Talking to mentors, talking to other people, growing your network, growing your community, because ultimately that's where you really learn and grow and like can become vulnerable with finding out who your true self really is.
I mean, to your point, it's not easy to do that, to go out of the way and get involved in the community. But then I think it's really difficult to get introspective and emotional. And that's why most people, unfortunately, don't do it, because it's hard. I think it's more difficult to really get introspective and deep with how I feel than going to the gym and working out a muscle, putting up 100 pounds, whatever it is. But the muscle that is the most important in all of us is our brain, our mind, the thing that keeps us going, the thing that is who we are at our core. And it really does take mental fortitude to dive deep, to address those things that you need to address from an emotional standpoint, from a goals standpoint, professionally, personally, or whatnot. And so what Sam and I are trying to do is help other people get to that level that they can get deep. There are ways to get deep. There are ways to understand who you are at your core. There are ways to help you understand what you want, where you want to go. There's ways to understand what inspires you. Because once you have those understanding of things, the elevating becomes a lot easier, instead of falling back into the instant gratification of the world and life, which is very easy to fall back into.
Yeah, and I think that's why I care so deeply about access and inclusion and equity, because it's all about being exposed to other people's perspectives, including others in the conversation, not intentionally excluding anybody. And when you bring in more, when you invite more into the world, like it can only get better. And when you build with that inclusive thought in mind, that's really when everything changes for the better, because it's truly built with everybody in mind and everybody feels like they can be.
And when we all feel like we belong somewhere, we have more passion, we have more kindness, we have more excitement, we have more fulfillment, and certainly newfound perspectives. And, you know, a lot of times people say, travel the world, go see different cultures, see how they live. Trust me, I love travel just as much as the next person. And I think it's a beautiful way to learn new perspectives and how to live life. But within our own backyards, our brothers and sisters here in the United States, there are many different ways to live life, and certainly a diverse myriad of perspectives that you could learn from. And so, to Samantha's point of getting involved in clubs, volunteering, going out in your community and trying to become a part of it, you're going to gain some of those similar experiences and newfound mindsets that you get with traveling to a foreign country just by taking a moment to look through someone else's perspective right in your own backyard.
Yeah, I was going to say too that like you don't need to change who you are to find these things. Like figure out what you love, figure out what you're passionate about, and then there's going to be something out there for you that makes you feel excited in doing the things. Like I remember when I was living in New York, I really wanted to run. There was a running group for individuals with disabilities where you were a guide called Achilles. I knew I wanted to be back in like the chorus exposure to arts and theater. And hey, there was a theater group for individuals with disabilities that needed other actors and supports to be part of it called CoLab. So it's like really just identifying like what excites you, how do you want to spend your time, and then also pairing that with your passion. That exists everywhere. And it's the best thing you can do.
I love that. All right, let's go to the next section. I don't think we did this section when we first had you on the podcast, the rapid fire questions. So Sam and I are just going to throw you questions, top of mind.
Fun.
Elevation Nation may know a few of them, but I've been asking this one a lot recently. What is one thing that you do if you're not having a good day that's just going to get your day right back on track?
I am known as the walker of my family and friends group. So you are most likely to find me on a walk, calling a friend or a loved one, listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, and that really resets me. And it's unbelievable.
All right,
getting out in nature.
My rapid fire question. Here we go. Non-camp guy here. Don't know a lot of the camp lingo, but I know that songs and cheers are very important in camp. So, Soloway, what is your favorite camp song or cheer?
Ooh, that's tough.
Ooh, this is
all I know is Baby
one.
Shark. That's all I know.
Baby Shark.
That's a really good
camp song, dude. Come on.
I would say any song by the campfire. Any country song with guitar, everyone singing along,
what a
s'mores
vibe.
in hand. You can't go wrong. Chicken fries?
Our camp,
I don't know.
The owner of the camp, a mentor of mine, someone I look up to so much, Dave Tager. He plays, I forget what the band, it's some instrument. He used to play at campfire, and he would sing a rendition of Leaving on a Jet Plane by John Denver. And like, you know, you're 7 years old.
Yeah.
You're singing that song. And then when I was there, when I was 19 years old as a counselor, we're still singing the song. And it's just like, it just gives you all the feels. And everyone's just, there's something else about it.
Parker, I love that because you just triggered one in my mind too. It's called Return to Pooh Corner. And it's like going back to your childhood self. Like it's really, it changes things when you like are back in that moment where you have no worries, you have that innocence. And I took a class in college called Learning About Children's Books, and you had to reread children's books in this education course. Highly recommend. Go
find your local library, pick up a children's book, and like see what meaning you can derive from it. I've actually started giving children's books away as gifts because of some message that it's talking about. But as an adult, like we're all really just trying to channel our inner child. Like how can you bring that inner you out to life and channel that like inner play, that energy, that fun. Like life's supposed to be fun and you're supposed to live it.
Sam,
so
you know what it
I
is?
love the kid motto.
Hang with Parker and Miles in a random place in the middle of nowhere. Sam played with Play-Doh this past weekend. We painted. We did crayons. What else did we do, Sammy? Come on. Let's hear.
We ate fruit without utensils.
Yeah. How
That
fun
was
was that?
bold of
Did we
us.
walk through a
Crazy.
stream?
Unbelievable.
Picking up
We
mud,
did.
putting our
We
feet.
did.
Yeah.
We threw some rocks.
Amazing.
We got stung by a bee, one of us. And really thrown it back.
Oh, the
This is
best.
childhood camp.
The best.
Your request is currently
All right.
It was
next,
beautiful.
Next question. I got another one. So we like to read. I don't know if we asked you last time or not. Sam reads on the Kindle. I read the old school paperback. Do you have a book recommendation for Elevation Nation? Something that's like you gotta read.
That's good. I'm an avid reader. I'm on Goodreads if anyone wants to find me. I recently got into audiobooks too. Just read Spare, Prince Harry's book. Was awesome. Well, actually, I listened to it and he was the one talking, so that was great. But all-time favorite book right now still is probably Untamed by Glennon Doyle. She is married to Abby Wambach, U.S. women's soccer champion, and just it's a coming-of-age book that makes you stop and think.
It's a great book.
So, highly recommend.
I love that one. All right, Samantha. That concludes our rapid fire, which brings us to our favorite segment, our final segment of the Elevation Nation podcast, something that's so near and dear to our hearts. Every member of Elevation Nation has what we call your mental motto, a phrase that embodies who you are and how you live your life. When you come on the podcast, you get a mental motto. When we go and speak at your school or your university or your company, we help you get a mental motto. It is something that we think is core to who we are. So, Samantha Soloway, what is your mental motto?
This one was very easy, but my mental model that I live and breathe day in and day out is to choose to include every day, everywhere.
Man,
And you certainly do that
love it.
every single day in the present and with your future goals. And Professor Soloway, one day, you've already taught us a ton about giving back to the world, spreading positivity and love, and stepping back to empathize with other people, put yourself in their position to learn and grow as a human. And as one of your friends and someone who looks up to you, I appreciate so much what you are doing in the world. And thank you for spending some time with us in Elevation Nation, not necessarily talking about all the achievements that you've had in your life, because we could have done that. You have a ton. But taking a moment to talk about how you like to give back, how you like to grow as a person, and how you like to elevate your community. So we love you for that, and thank you.
Sam Soloway for president. I'm putting it on a pin, and I'm going to wear that when you eventually run for some type of political office, because I feel like that's something the world needs.
Well, I love this Elevation Nation community and love talking with you two always. Grateful for friends
Yeah,
of friends
totally.
that introduced us. And just goes to show the power of network and community and how much it means to have true friendships in this world. So,
Totally.
Amen to
Sammy?
that. Elevation Nation, until next week. Peace.